Hey guys, welcome to the 2 Million Minutes podcast, how to make the most of your 4 years in college. During finals week, my friend Rosan and I picked the brains of Harvard seniors in the class of 2017 and asked them to reflect on their college experiences, break down how they approach different aspects of college life, and share lessons they learned with future students. In this episode, we speak with Zena Edosomwan, who is a center forward for Harvard men's basketball last year. He speaks about his experiences both as a student athlete and as an athlete before coming to college, as well as more generally about how college has shaped his thinking in many areas. He's done some really interesting photography projects and is also publishing a new one called Harvard #Unfiltered, which we've linked to in the description. We hope you enjoy this interview, and here is Zena Edosomwan.
So today we have Zena Edosomwan. You're graduating very soon. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited. I think it's a long time coming, and it's been a great 4 years here. I mean, obviously, you have your ups and downs, but I'm super excited to kind of spend more time with my family, be back home in LA, kind of my comfort zone. I'm not really a big fan of the weather, so I like that nice warm weather of California, so it'd be nice to be back home.
What are you talking about? It's beautiful here.
Oh, yeah.
So, a little bit about your background. You're a center forward for Harvard men's basketball. Yep. What do you think is one of the biggest takeaways you've had from your 4 years here, specifically on the basketball team?
On the basketball team, I mean, I definitely enjoy the brotherhood and the camaraderie, and I really have learned to value, not to say I had less value of it before, but just the idea of what it means to be a student athlete and holding yourself accountable and responsible, and your character being very important on and off the court. How do you deal with adversity? Whether that's in school, whether that's on the basketball court. So it's a lot of things transition, not just in basketball or when you're sacrificing your teammates, but also transition to the classroom and a lot of different life skills I've learned. So it's been fun.
Okay. Can you tell us how you got started playing basketball?
One day I think I was 7 years old. I was an overweight kid, and I loved watching Saturday morning cartoons. I don't know if you guys might be too young to know that, but they used to have cartoons on Saturday mornings, and I used to love watching those. And,
what was your favorite show?
Oh, I love big Power Rangers guy, Yu-Gi-Oh. And stuff like that. So that's what I really enjoyed. And then my dad ambushes me and it's like, yeah, let's go outside, we'll put on some shorts, and I ended up at basketball practice, and I was so angry. So basketball wasn't one of those things where I loved it. It grew over time to be something I love very much. Yeah.
So you were top 100 college recruit when you were looking at where you wanted to go for college.
Yeah.
Two-part question: how would you say you got to that point, and when you were at that point, how did you decide where to go next?
Yeah. So it's a great question. How did I get to that point? Obviously, you're going to hear the usual, a lot of hard work. I also was I feel like I always kind of had a sense of a chip on my shoulder. So a lot of people always felt like I wasn't necessarily good enough, or I wouldn't, be as good as, the player I ended up luckily being. But so that kind of made me very determined, especially my dad definitely pushed me a lot to really believe in myself that it was possible. Because he always had this idea that I was going to be a top 100 player. So as time grew, and I put in a lot of work, I sacrificed a lot for it. I started to see this can actually be possible. What was the second question again?
And when you were at that point of being in that position and deciding where to go next, I read somewhere you got 39 offers from different universities. Yeah. How did you think that through, and how did you make that decision where to go next?
So I went to a very highly academic school called Harvard Westlake, which is a top 10 school in the country. So every year we have I guess somewhere 8 to 13 kids who come to Harvard. 3 of my closest friends, my teammates from my 9th grade freshman team, went to Harvard too. You know what I mean? And they were not student athletes here. So already, I think just that culture around me it taught me to really value higher education. And not, I mean, obviously going to college, but I mean going to some of the best schools in the world. So when I was cutting down my list, automatically, if you want a top 25 school academically, I was maybe I'm going to look in a different direction and focus on these schools. So my final list was UCLA, USC, Cal Berkeley, University of Texas, Austin, and Harvard. So all really very, very great institutions. You have Berkeley. It's a top public university. So academics, just in my family, being a Nigerian family, sometimes the stereotypes along how important education is, and that was big for me, going to the next direction. And then the next step for me was, hopefully find like the right system that fit. But I had the confidence that I could always find and figure it out. So I just wanted to make sure it was a place where I was happy. The coaching staff definitely really believed in me, and I always believed in being a student and an athlete, not just being an athlete, or kind of not fitting to stereotypes and molds of what a jock is and so forth.
That's amazing. How was that like then for you coming to Harvard from a Nigerian family? Did you feel like you had a little bit more weight to carry than?
Yeah, I mean, so I wouldn't say necessarily it was, I guess, for me being a Nigerian family, I felt more pressure in the sense of just being a first generation, and I was the first one in my family not to necessarily go to college, but go to college here in the States. So that was really big for me. So, I guess you guys may know, like sometimes when you are a person who gets the opportunity to go to a place like Harvard, there's a lot of pressure, both internally and externally, because now all your little cousins and your family members, and they're all kind of looking to you to be like the success story. Because there's Harvard, there's this idea of like you've made it almost, right? And in your mind, when you experience it and you're here, you're like, I have not quite made it yet. There's still a next step, but there's this idea of like you will have this penultimate idea of success, and so that was kind of like, well, like I don't want to mess up or disappoint them, So that pressure was on me. It was a little bit heightened in a sense, but I was happy to be here.
So what would you say success looks like for you?
Success looks, for me personally, I've learned that it is happiness. I know that sounds very cliche, cheesy, but I think sometimes at a place like Harvard specifically, we can get so caught up in what looks good. Because I think we've learned here, whether through high school, to really brand ourselves, in a sense. Think about our resumes. Think about the things we do over the summer. Like, even though our intentions may obviously be very good and very pure-hearted, we still are smart enough to know like how this may look or how this can be perceived. Do you know what I mean? And all of you guys here are probably your teacher's favorite students, were like liked by all your principals because you guys represent the school in a very great light. So it's like you come to a place like Harvard, and it's an adjustment because you are in a very tough environment in the sense that everyone was the best. So now you're put a lot of self-pressure on themselves all in one environment. And now we find ourselves comparing our experiences to everyone else rather than finding our own sense of happiness and completeness with our own journey, and whether we're going academically or our other endeavors. So what internship are you doing? What do this? I'm working at Google, I'm working at Facebook, I'm working at Goldman Sachs. It's like we're always comparing to see, okay, who has the upper hand.
Yeah, that's very powerful.
Yeah.
So you touched on adjustment. How was it like for you to come to Harvard? How was your fall or freshman year?
It was great. I absolutely loved it. I was just excited because because I had to do the extra year to come to Harvard. I went to prep school for a year before I came to Harvard.
Okay.
At Northfield Mount Herman. I felt liberated again in the sense that like I was like, wow, I'm in college now. I can, you know what I mean? Like, when you first step on campus and you're like, my mom's not calling me every 10 seconds. She's like, I don't have to go back home. I can go back home when I want to now.
Yeah.
And that kind of
actually don't know what that.
Yeah. Just that I guess that kind of renewed sense of freedom that I felt my senior year, because I think about all I've been seeing on Facebook were all my friends from my senior year of high school, enjoying college, taking pictures, and like here I am stuck in my dorm, like as a 19-year-old going to be 20. So it was a great experience. I really loved it, and I was just because I felt like I had really earned it, with this kind of wild journey that people didn't necessarily think I would be able to make it to a place like Harvard. It was very fun for me, and I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
Sweet. But like with this freedom also comes a lot of like responsibility to organize and to use your time wisely. How did you tackle that, especially since you're a student athlete? Like, organizing your day.
Organizing my day. So in terms of organizing my day, I definitely obviously technically I would do things like, Google Calendar, things of that nature to help me throughout my day. Also, I felt like I had a really great support system in the sense of really good friends who held me accountable. So my roommate my freshman year were really big on just hey, how's everything going with classes, just checking in on me, kind of, definitely have that support system, hey, how's class going? But I think an important thing in that relationship was that there was transparency in the sense that hey, how's everything going with you? How's going? I need to get this done. I need to get this done. So then that way, it was easier for him to hold me accountable, and vice versa. Be like, hey, we need to get to doing work. You know what I mean? And understanding that, rather than like, how's everything going? Perfect. You know what I mean? Like, the whole, like, everything's great. So it's, it was very honest with each other, which therefore I was able to have that support system to definitely help me freshman year.
Very cool.
Nice. You're graduating now.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 23 years old.
Wow.
I'm old.
That's,
Yeah.
Because of that gap year, how do you think that you tackled your college experience differently than if you had gone straight in being a year younger?
I think one thing for sure, I mean, I think everybody's experience is different, but just maturity. I was just so much mature, and I think ready to, like, I was like overly ready to, like, just be in college and kind of be on my own. And prep school allowed me to be with my family, which was really hard. And I was in a situation where, like, it was tough, with all these rules, but, like, now I felt like I could definitely handle that responsibility better, and I wasn't running wild and acting crazy. Like, because, I mean, for a lot of people, freshman year is a huge transition, obviously. It's like maybe you had overbearing parents in a way who, like, didn't really let you go out, and you probably spent most of your time studying. So now you're like, wow, how am I reacting in different social settings, and having people in different circumstances where you're like, oh, it's 8, 9, 10, 11, I'm hanging out with friends, and, like, we're talking, we're having discussions, or late nights doing work and in the library, and there's other people like me. So it's cool. Yeah.
Switching a little bit more to talk about basketball.
Yeah.
You're a little bit of a public figure because of your positions. We looked online and we saw this article titled, quote, Harvard's Zena Edosomwan will not read this, but he's come a long way to lead. And it said that you claim you've never read a word written about yourself. Is that true?
It's very true.
And why is that?
Honestly, it's always felt really weird to me, and I just always never wanted things to get to my head. I was always really grateful because, like, I've been lucky enough to, through basketball and through other things and other endeavors, to be able to have things written about me and people to give me that honor, and it's been great. And I appreciate it, but I always have felt very weird about it. And I wanted to always stay focused on, like, what I'm doing and never let, the quote unquote success, or not the success, I would say, like the acknowledgement and the appreciation for me in the form of, these different things get to my head. And I always want to, like, just stay true to who I am.
When was the first time you had to deal with something like that?
I think when I was in about 8th grade. I think they wrote something in, like, our local newspaper about me going to, like, Harvard Westlake as an 8th grader and being a good player or whatever, and then, like, Los Angeles Times and other articles, and I was just like, it can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to stay true to myself and not let it get to my head, or sometimes when you read things like that, they're, I guess, great and always praising you, it can kind of, I think you start to not be yourself in the sense that, like, oh, people are watching me, so I have to, like, act or move differently, and I didn't want it to be that way. I just want to kind of just relax and, not. Now, have I been excited about certain things? Like, one time our team was featured in a Slam magazine, and, like, one of those things for me was like, wow, like, I've always grown up reading this magazine, and to be in it was really, really cool. But I still didn't read it. So I was just like, I'm really happy we're in there. But
that's so cool. And you hope to keep it like this?
Yeah, of course. Even when I do projects or, like, social things, like, I don't ever want to put myself in front of the lens at all to let you know, hey, it's me who did it. It's like, I'll pub it out there to the world because I think these are important messages to be made, but I still won't, like, include myself in it. Because people are like, why don't you put yourself in the project? I'm like, nah, I like being behind the lens and
interesting,
guiding. Yeah.
You've done a few of those projects. Could you tell us a little bit about what you published, and the one that, before we started speaking, you mentioned that you're currently working on or going to publish?
Yeah, so there's 2 right now that have been published. One was the Harvard Black Is Project, which was when did I film it? I filmed it my freshman year. I released it, I believe, my junior year. And it was basically just a project to show the importance of individuality, and I just had people talk about their different experiences and chopped it up and put into a little video. And I wanted people of color, because at the time there was a lot of cases of police brutality, and what I wanted to do was, I saw so much negativity on Facebook, of people being like, white people this, black people that, or Trayvon Martin this, and I was like, well, I think this is, instead of focusing on the divisiveness, like, let's kind of come together and focus on like what's positive about what do you like about yourself, what's your aspects of yourself. So they wrote their own. I always think it's important to write your own ideas, and then we put it together because I don't want to tell people how to think. You know what I mean? So, and I think it's more powerful when I tell people how to think, and it's less criticism when I tell people how to think because it's their own opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Thank You Black Women was really just an ode to women of color. I think it could have been Thank You Women because I just appreciate important women in my life, but due to me being an African American male, being born by a black woman, having black aunts around me, the women of color who definitely helped me on campus, I thought it was an important project to let them feel that, let them know that they're very appreciated. Not let them feel, but let them know they're very appreciated because, I think historically, we all know the history of this country. History of this country is, and certain Eurocentric beauty standards have told black women that they're not necessarily beautiful or they're ugly, and also just considering gender dynamics. So not only this being, the history of blacks in this country, but also adding black females in that other dynamic because of obviously the inequality of pay of women and so forth. It was just really just like, hey, here's a project, just let you know, like, we see you, we appreciate you, we thank you. And so far, we're raising money for it right now.
Oh, really?
We've raised $1,400. No, $1,600, I believe, for half of it's going to, a certain amount of it's going to the Disability Cancer Care Society, which is basically helping black women suffer from breast cancer, and also the Dorchester Boys and Girls Club. It's an inner city Boys and Girls Club because I think the project is both art and also just like kind of somewhat of a movement. So I wanted that to be represented in the charities.
So what was the process like? I mean, taking on like a personal project is always something that, especially here at Harvard, since there's so many other things you could do, it's always hard to imagine. I don't know. I was just curious, like, how was it like starting and now also releasing it?
I just get inspired, and I also just like, I don't know if you guys probably have this, but just moments where you spend a lot of time just thinking, and then you have all these ideas that pop up in your head, and I really am inspired by the people here at Harvard because it's like, I don't know, sometimes I get the sense like, am I doing anything here? Because everyone's just doing really cool things, and you're like, well, what am I doing? And also I'm just inspired in the sense that I'm like, I don't necessarily feel that there's a limit. I feel like, I can do it. Yeah. So I just walked around with a camera, started filming, and I think Harvard's one of those places where if you ask questions, people are willing to help. I think a lot of times people are very scared to ask, and I think if that's anything I could tell people is like, don't be afraid to ask. There's so many valuable people here who are like, and you're dealing with so many intelligent people. We're talking about website creators, musicians, people who just have so many different skill sets outside of just being great students, and that if you just reach out to them, they're willing to help. So
definitely,
that was definitely big in terms of helping me create. And then you write a draft, obviously, and then you start to, okay, who can I reach out to? Because before I did the project, I reached out to Professor Skip Gates, who's a prominent professor here, and Professor Dr. Alan Counter, and I was like, what would you think about this? Because I think whenever you do a project at Harvard and it's going to have the Harvard name attached to it, you be ready for critique. You know what I mean? Be ready for people from the outside world and within the Harvard community to really look critically at what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say. So you have to make sure it's good, or just honestly, or just do your best to make sure it's the best as possible. Because no matter what, you're going to be critiqued. I mean, that's how we're wired here. We need to think very critically about our world and who we are and what's going on. So I think that was definitely very important in that aspect.
Yeah. What were like other things that you would say are important for other people wanting to, start their own project, or I don't know, things to consider, or any major roadblocks? I
think number one, why are you doing it? How important? Like, why is this message important? And I say that because, like, at the end of the day, like, if you're doing it for someone else and not yourself, and you have to really believe in your message. And I think when you're passionate about something, anything you do, like, it's much easier to defend it. It's much easier to talk about it. Just like when you're writing a paper and you like the topic, even if it's hard, you're like, I actually enjoy this. So like putting in those hours towards it doesn't necessarily feel as much as work as if you like when you don't like it and it's brutal. So that's definitely a big thing. Like, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and make sure like you give it your best effort. There's no reason to go half-hearted on it. I think in the end, it's just going to end up disappointed. Whenever I do a project, I'm happy that so far I haven't had to look back and be like, what if I would have did? Like, I really am just like, I'm content in it. I'm like, all right, it's done. Because I know I've exhausted, and I feel like I've tried my best. Yeah.
For sure. Why film or photography?
I think film and photography is such a beautiful art form that people can relate to, and I think it's obviously like in our day and age such an easier way to get messages out. Whether through social media and so forth. And I think it's a cool way because I can, it's weird when I do these things. I picture obviously like how the video is going to look like, and it's like how do I bring this thing in my mind to life, and like that's kind of the process that I go through. And like that, I feel like I can really express these messages properly in film, editing, and so forth, and photography, and like what type of message, what type of thing do I want you to see.
What was something that you learned from the first project that you were able to apply to the second or third?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question. From the first project, I was horrible at like filming. I was just like camera everywhere. Like camera was literally shaking. I was like, this is really horrible. So when I was getting the video done, thank you to Ben Brock, who's a award-winning film director here. That's why Harvard Special Place.
Yeah.
He's done documentaries, so he helped me edit the video and make it beautiful. But when I was actually filming this one, I let someone named Sydney Claire from Leslie film it, and she's a videographer and photographer. But like I just kind of helped, like, this is how I wanted this, I want this, I want to look, let's go this angle. And she was really able to help me bring these visions to life.
Okay, there we go.
That's really cool. Maybe switching gears.
Yeah.
Academics.
Yeah.
You're concentrating in
East Asian Studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what motivated you to pursue that?
Yeah, I've been studying Chinese since I was in 9th grade, and it was really, really hard. And I was like, why am I doing this? So I took time off from it. And then my sophomore year, what happened? Actually, I was working in a gym doing a kids basketball camp, and I met a man, and he was like, oh, I watched you play before. I didn't know who he was. I was just being nice, just having a conversation with him. He's like, would you like to come to China? And, yeah. He's like, yeah, you should come to China. And like, because he was, and unbeknownst to me, he was the head of a bunch of schools across the globe. And he was like, you should come to China. And I was like, yeah, all right. Like, what I mean? I didn't really, I was like, because I'd never been out the country before then. I'd spent so much time playing basketball with someone that I never had the time. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to go to China. And then we figured it out. And I went to, my first time I went to China, I went 3 weeks by myself. Went to Xi'an, Shanghai, and Beijing. And then I was like, oh, I got to go back and learn this language because it made my journey so much better.
Wow.
And every time I go there, once you learn the language and the culture and the history, it just makes that experience so much.
How many times have you been to China?
3 times now. Yeah. So I went from going to different schools to like last summer when I was there, I was running an education conference and I brought 7 other kids with me. So it's been fun. I can go back there this summer. Yeah.
When you first went, what was either an example of something or in general what attracted you to that culture?
I asked myself the same question, and I really can't give you like a finite answer. But when I went there, I mean just beforehand, but when I went there, I love the traditions, I love the food, I love the sense that like when you have a meal, it's very family style. So that means like you may have like a rotating plate and everyone shares everything. So like that was a really cool concept to me of bringing people together. I love the history. I remember getting to see the Great Wall of China for the first time, and it just blew my mind that like people, like such a great civilization and culture could create this and build this, and I was just like, wow, like I'm just blown away. China's such an interesting country. I mean, just the history and look at it's such an economic power now, but it's happened at such a relatively extremely fast pace. So yeah, things of that nature have definitely helped me in terms of getting a closer relationship with it and enjoying it more. Yeah.
And that was before coming to college, obviously.
Oh no, this was after coming to college.
Oh, okay.
This was after coming to college. Before then, I don't know. My mom was just like, "Hey, you should take Chinese," and I was like, "All right." And then I was like, "Oh gosh,
Wow.
this is so hard."
Wow.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
But my mom actually, it's really funny. My mom is, she told me in 9th grade, she was like, you should take Chinese because with the way the world is going, it's going to be a powerful language to learn and opportunities. And she was right. And like, I really thank her for that because now it's like I actually truly enjoy and love it. Yeah.
So
How tough was the learning curve, actually? Because Chinese seems to be such a trendy language right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. It's very difficult in the sense of, it's also hard to learn languages in general. I feel like when you study it for an hour, right? Then you like leave your classroom and you're back speaking English again. So like, it's just like, and then the summer happens, then you lose. So, you know what I mean? You lose so much. So,
And you add on a completely different style of writing.
So it's like I always feel like you always feel like you always have to relearn a little bit. In Chinese, one of those languages, it's so different. You have tones. You also have like characters, and then like I could say X I, but that could mean she. You know what I mean? So each, it's just a very unique language that's so different from English.
Wow. Okay. So so studying Chinese was before college, but in college, did your experience going to China affect how you looked at your coursework, especially in the East Asian Studies department, and how so?
Yeah, it makes it really cool that when you talk about certain things in class historically, or you talk about the current state of China, you're like, oh, like you could pinpoint things to experiences. Whether it's talking about the economy, like you're like, oh, I remember. Like I was just talking to Professor Pruitt, who's a East Asian Chinese philosopher. ER 18 was one of the more popular courses at Harvard, and we were just talking about how in China you will drive around, and you see huge mega towers, huge infrastructure, like probably fitting maybe 10,000 people in these huge compounds, and no one lives there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No one lives there. So
it's
so how do you like tackle these problems? And like this is a real issue. And you're like, my mind is, I can picture myself driving through Qingpu, Shanghai Qingpu, and then just seeing these big buildings, like no one lives there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just being like, wow, what's going on with this? This is this solution that the government's trying to have. Like, how are they going to figure it out? Yeah.
That's really cool. What is one piece of advice that you might give to either an incoming freshman or a junior who's about to be a senior, any of the younger grades or classes?
Failing is a good thing. And then let me be specific about that term, because like I don't want to come to Harvard. Please don't do that. Yeah. What I'm saying is, I think everyone here they've had this constant like, oh, I'm succeeding. But then they're gonna come to Harvard College, and it's not gonna always be like that. Right. And you have to understand it's a 4-year period, and there's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of allure of Harvard and the Harvard brand and what it means. So like once you kind of get over the fairy tale of this place, Harvard, it's a great place. So not get me wrong, it's amazing. And you kind of go through your personal struggles, mentally and so forth. Like, how do you overcome those things? And you have to understand like it's a journey. So, and I say failure like in the sense that failure is like a journey. It's like if it doesn't hit the first time, okay, does that mean I'm going to give up? Does that mean like all my life, like everything is horrible? Like, no, I have to like, what's the next route? How do I figure things out?
That makes sense. Yeah. I think that's something you hear a lot.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. And it's really, just speaking as a freshman, it's like, it's a little hard to picture that down the road. Like, but how can that be a good thing? Yeah. But I really, like, I think that being comfortable and failing at something is maybe not something I want to do, but I think I can definitely see how once it happens, it's something that you can
like some people are going to come here, they've never gotten an A- or lower on a test. They might get a C, they might even get a D, they might even, like, does that mean you're not smart enough? Like, sometimes, even when I've been at Harvard, I question them, like, sometimes you may get those moments where, like, do I belong?
Right.
Yeah.
And I've talked to professors about this, and they get that same feeling of, like, almost a little bit of inferiority, like, do I belong here? Like, am I worthy?
Wow.
You start to question yourself. Yeah.
Without maybe mentioning the name, what was an example?
The professor basically talked to me about how he went to a huge state school and, taught a class of 200-300 people. And he was obviously offered a position here at Harvard. He taught here, and now how he taught there was so different, because the Harvard, in his words, the Harvard kids, and I don't want to distort things, but in some sense, like, the Harvard kids were thinking so critically and asking him questions he hadn't even thought of. So now he's like, how can I teach you guys this class when you guys are asking me questions that, like, because he probably was used to going to such a different pace or a different way of teaching, he almost felt like he had to change his whole teaching style. And I'm telling someone that who's been teaching at this place for almost 20 years, that transition was hard. It's no longer 200 kids, it's maybe 10, 12 kids, more intimate setting, and people are thinking really, really critically about the material and questioning things to a different level rather than just accepting what you're telling them. And now he's like, I had to really like learn how to adjust. And he's like, I question myself and my ways. So I was like, that to me, the fact that he could show that vulnerability and tell me that meant a lot, and to let you know that like people, like, it's okay to feel vulnerable at times here. even though sometimes Harvard may feel like everyone acts like everything is perfect, even when it's not. I think I've been there. We've all been there where we're just like, yeah, it's all good. Then you go back to your room,
Very true.
So that's some of the growing pains you go through. Yeah.
You mentioned conversations with your professors a lot.
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like a lot of people tend to neglect.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious, how do you reach out to professors, or is that something you do intentionally to build a relationship with a professor?
It's a little bit of both. I think, 'cause especially when I feel like once I've centered more towards East Asian studies, and it was stuff I was really interested in, that's when I like, oh yeah, I definitely want to ask more questions and learn more. And like these professors are so cool and all their work in China. It's like, wow, because just like how you said earlier, like going there more, how that changes your experience and how things go. It's like, like, what are your opinions on this? So I think it's, if you have a chance to, like, professors want to help you, and I think like going to office hours, people like, listen, I wasn't at office hours every single week of the day, but like if I ever had a chance after class to talk for 5 minutes sometimes, or go to a professor's office hours at least once a semester or something, and just ask questions. I mean, just, hey, how are you doing? Like, how did you think about this? I think it'll really make your experience a lot better. Like, a lot of professors that I took classes with, I took pictures with them. I'm going to frame them up in my room. So like, think about it. We're at Harvard, right? We have the top professors in their fields in the world. These are people who, like, their textbooks, a bunch of other schools across the globe are reading their textbooks, and we have them at our, like, wanting to meet us, wanting to get to know us. And honestly, those relationships sometimes can go a long way. You never know, So if you have an opportunity, like, these are the same people who are going to be, if you apply to grad school sometimes, they may be writing your recs, giving you a letter of recommendations. And when you sometimes get to know them, like, build a relationship with them, they just want to help you out. And I think when you're not afraid to ask questions, or, say like, hey, can I grab a meal with you, or this and that, like, people are so willing and open. You literally, like, I would say this to you guys, like, you can't be scared. Sometimes we have this, like, I don't want to ask a question because fear of rejection. You know what I mean?
There you go.
But like, when you hold yourself back like that, I think you're kind of limiting your experience and what it can be. Like, I just had a professor, I did a project, and he donated to my project, until like I had a charity event for it. Donated a really good amount of money through his organization for so things of that nature. I just sat down in his office. Oh, great to see you. I was like, do you remember me? I took his class 2 years ago.
Wow, that's incredible.
So,
The resources are there if you're willing to reach out for them.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great.
If you could go back in time and talk to yourself
freshman year,
what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to relax. Don't put so much pressure. I think, no matter what, I think everyone wants to fit in, and everyone wants to have, like, like, sounds really silly, but like friends and like people that they can go to. But I'm thankful how everything went freshman year. But yeah, I would tell myself to relax, and to really enjoy it. Because it's like, freshman year is a very special time. I think it's almost like, it's either, like, honestly, it kind of goes like freshman year and sophomore year. Like, freshman year, Harvard's like, we'll do anything to make sure everything is perfect for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, it almost feels a little bit like high school on steroids a little bit, because you have the freshman dance, but you have way more freedom, and like you're in the yard with all your friends, And sophomore year, it's like you're in your houses, and you're like, your relationships, your dynamics with your friends really change. Now, granted, if you guys are very close, like, hopefully you guys will still catch meals, but like, your house becomes a big part of your identity, rather than like, in terms of like, oh, you meet more people in your house, your interactions, your lunches, your meals. There's no more Annenberg. So things become a little more intimate. You meet different people, and upperclassmen, your interactions with upperclassmen, sophomore, junior, seniors. Right. So it's different. So I was like, try to relax, just really take it all in for what it is, because things will change. And it's like, you're probably going to get a sense of, like, from freshman year to sophomore year, it's going to be a huge jump, because you're a little bit more on your own. And I was having dinner, lunch with Drew Faust, and someone brought the question of, like, how does Harvard improve itself from freshman to sophomore year? Because some people feel like freshman year, they really give you all these, they try to do whatever, they have whatever it takes, a bunch of resources, but sophomore year, people feel like, whoa, I'm kind of left alone, and how do I transition to it all? So that's something where they're really trying to improve to.
So what would you say, maybe for us, since we're rising sophomores, do you have any pieces of advice for us to make that transition a little bit smoother?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to get help if you need it. Like whether it's academic work, tutoring, and don't. I think some people like to really overload themselves. Like, oh yeah, I got Harvard down. Like, I think, and I don't necessarily mean with classwork. I mean just with extracurriculars. Because sometimes I feel like we're all highly motivated people. Like I'm one of those people where like I can go on vacation, but like I can't vacation for too long. Cause like, I'm not doing. I feel like I'm not doing anything. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm like, all right, this was great, but like I need to get back to being busy and like doing stuff. But I think sometimes you need to like take a second, to once again relax.
Yeah.
And like if I could say anything to you guys, it's like I think a lot of times we think of we spend so much time like I must complete this goal, I must complete this goal, I must complete this goal, and then what happens? You complete the goal. It's like next, what's the next thing? Like take a second, exhale, and be, all right, well, enjoy it for a little bit, and then what's the next thing? I think sometimes here we're always looking for that next check mark, check mark, and then we get to a point where we're like, okay, well then what's next? Am I not doing anything in my life? But like we need to just sit back, enjoy, and like reflect, because it's time. I cannot believe it. You hear your parents tell you all the time, you guys are not going to believe you guys are going to be second semester seniors. And you can be like, where did time went? Yeah.
For sure.
So, what do you think? Like, how did you change coming in as a freshman and now leaving this place?
I think I was really super duper social my like freshman year, but I think also like logistically speaking, how it's kind of set up with the yard and everything, it's much easier to do that, and just the pure sheer excitement of being at Harvard and like being with like such a brilliant, amazing place. Not to say like that excitement doesn't dwindle, but it changes for you because you kind of adjust and you get not necessarily comfortable, but like you just get used to it. You know what I mean? So sometimes like when I walk through the yard, I forget that like I was like a starry-eyed freshman years ago who was just like, I'm at Harvard. You know what I mean? Like, wow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like sometimes when I walk through the yard and I see all those people, like I still get that feeling back, like wow, like I'm at an amazing place. Because sometimes you think about how you felt beginning when you first stepped on campus, all the pictures you probably were taking, mom was
Oh yeah.
and then to like now where you're just like, oh, I'm at Harvard now. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like keep that excitement because it is a very special thing. I mean, we're very lucky enough and privileged enough to be living a lot of people's dreams. I mean, even people within the Ivy League, you know what I mean, are still like, oh, I wish I was at Harvard.
So what are like a few memories or moments or experiences that give you that feeling of like, wow, I'm at Harvard. Wow, this is exciting. If you think back.
I think, wow. I think the first time I took a class called African American Studies 10 with Professor Skip Gates, and he's big time. I mean, he's the man.
Yeah.
And it's weird to see teachers you like, hey, like that professor on CNN. Or that's my tutor on like, you know what I mean? It's a professor on CNN or like on PBS leading a whole 1 hour special or like interviewing really cool people, and you're like, wow, this is the access I have to. This is the access I have, or even simply like the opportunities. Like I just signed up for a trip to hopefully go to Japan in August, all paid for, and I'm like, Harvard's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, why am I going to Japan for a week for a cultural experience? It's exciting, So, I think that is definitely it.
So when you have a view towards those kinds of crazy things that might not necessarily happen at another place.
I mean, they don't. They really don't, right? You may have one or two professors somewhere, but it's like these professors here are, if they're not teaching us, they're giving talks across the globe.
Right.
I mean, their schedules are ridiculous, and like here we are being able to have the honor to take their class.
Wow, yeah.
But I think it's also important that like you guys, we as students also understand our value to this place. Obviously, like we're giving, like Harvard gives us so much, but like there's also a reason why we're here. We're also deserving of it, and there's something like they're bringing kids who can add into this community. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes I'm not saying we should sit there. I'm doing everything for Harvard, but we should also be like, yes, I do belong here, and yes, I do have something to offer to this place or to add on to it to make this community a better place when I leave.
For sure. Take a few steps back.
Yeah.
You talked about taking a breather after the next check mark.
Yeah.
What were some of the activities that you did to take that breather that were non-academic and also not basketball?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. It doesn't sound really silly, but just took a final and like I felt like I did really well, like, but I have another one tomorrow, like, or I have another one next couple of days. I'll be like, you know what? I'm gonna watch Netflix for a little bit. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. I'm gonna go because at the end of the day, like, you're not going to remember this test you took 10 years ago. Like, you're going to remember the relationships, the friendships you formed, the funny stories with your friends when you look back on these things. And, like, I think sometimes when, like, I don't do too hot on something, I try to remember that, like, you know what is this going to really mean for me in the long run? Or sometimes if I'm like, should I actually go to this event, or should I actually, like, I'm tired, but I'm like, when am I going to have this opportunity again?
Right.
And when I put those things in perspective, it makes it a lot easier to be like, all right, give me the energy to be like, let me go do this, let me go to this event, because it's like, when are you going to have a freshman, like, when are you going to have a freshman formal again? You know what I mean? Like, or certain things of that nature, like, so that's why I try to kind of put in perspective. I'm not going to go to every single thing, I just don't want to, and, you know, I don't want to be everywhere all the time, but I think when you put things in those perspectives, it makes it a little easier. I mean,
what's going to matter 10 years down the line?
Yeah. And like those friendships, those bonds you build, the cool things you do outside, like, you're not going to remember the test, the final you were stressing over. That's why when I see people stressing all the time, I'm like, I understand why you're stressing, like, but I'm like, relax. Like,
what do you see yourself doing a few years or 10 years down the line?
10 years down the line. I mean, I'm really excited to pursue my dream of playing basketball professionally. That's been my dream my whole life. But also, like, what I'm even more excited about, or equally excited about, is continuing to live with purpose, in the sense that, like, I want to give to others. I want to, like, it makes me happy to see other people happy. And I mean, like, and especially, like, helping those less fortunate, or helping just, like, inspire. So that's still working with the World Leadership Schools Association, and working on international education. And my kind of job with them, as a chairman of our student committee, is just to, like, how can we continue to connect education from different parts of the world, whether it's South Africa, whether it's China, whether it's the U.S. here. Because, like, the kids, they are, like, I know it sounds really silly, but they are the future. You know, they are and I think people don't understand the bigger initiative is by having all these kids from across the globe, from all these different cultures, different places, and bring them together. This is how we're stopping racism. This is how we're stopping ignorance. Because people can now look to, like, oh, I remember meeting these people from these different backgrounds, and, like, I had these preconceived notions, these ideas, but now through these experiences with them, these interactions that we've had, I've learned. Because I think sometimes people get very offended by the term ignorance, but sometimes I look at it as, like, you simply just don't know. I think we've all been ignorant to things, like, you don't know, you know. So I look at it that way, and that's, like, no matter where I'm at, like, my dream has always been, since I was 13 years old, is, like, I make a really good amount of money, I just want to pay for kids' education. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I feel like your brain is the most powerful tool, and, like, to help aid that in any way. I want to do it for kids who don't necessarily, they think that they can do it, because if you're someone from a tough background, not even tough background, but from a lower income background, or, you know, you've had some crazy existential situations that have happened to you, like, by giving you an education, and you going to college and having a family, and your wife going to college, and your kids going to college, now I've stopped the trajectory of you possibly going to prison, selling drugs, doing other things, leading to a life of crime, a life of low pay, maybe unhappiness. Now you can help your kids, you know. So it's like,
what gave you that thought at 13 years old?
I don't know. I think I'm really inspired by my parents, and my mom especially, because I used to always see her. She'd always be so kind to people, and I was like, in my juvenile mind, I would be like, oh, why are you always so helping everybody? Like, just in the sense that, like, why are you always willing to sacrifice so much of yourself
for sure
for others when they wouldn't reciprocate the same thing for you? And she taught me that, you know, it's not about that. It's like, when you do good for people, you just do good. It's not about, I need a return. And that mentality kind of stuck with me as, like, wow, like, that really resonates. But it's one of those things where I had to grow up and learn. And I'm not saying don't be used by people and let them use and abuse you, but what I am saying is, like, we should all feel that, like, if we can help one person in our life and help change their perspective, help them grow, then, like, slowly that can help others. And we can really, that's one way in my mind we can really advocate and really live with a purpose and with change. Because, like, listen, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Like,
definitely,
you know, you can make all the money in the world and still be miserable.
Can't take it with you.
Extremely powerful. So, like, that service, that sense of purpose, that seems to be a very, very central to who you are and what you believe in. How do you keep yourself in check and stay true to yourself? Because I feel like here there's so many, you know, different things and distractions, so to say. What do you do to keep yourself in check and stay true to who you are?
I think sometimes we all have like little moments where we like struggle, and I think I'm very thankful for people around me, my close friends who are, who tell me when I'm wrong or tell me when like they see me kind of going in a different direction, and I think it's just important to be like held accountable because sometimes like when you're going down a different route or you're kind of different, like you're changing from what your usual norm, like sometimes you can't see it. You know what I mean? You can't like always like guard against yourself because usually sometimes we go through mental things where we don't necessarily see it. So it's important that like your true friends are there to be able to like, hey, like how's everything going with you? Like I don't think you're like you don't seem really focused. Like what's going on? Like and you're like then by someone else like helping you see that what you can't see in yourself, I think now it's up to you and your responsibility to be like, okay, well, I trust this person and this advice. Let me see how I can help change that and aid in hopefully bettering myself.
What's a conversation with a friend or otherwise that you remember as having directly changed the decision or direction of something you were doing?
I remember talking to my roommate and I was like struggling earlier semester senior year. I was really struggling in so many facets of my life, mentally, physically, emotionally, and I was just felt like I was all over the place, and he told me, he just reminded me that like it's not about me, it's bigger than me. It's like my little brother and sister, it's my mom, it's those people who have like sacrificed a lot for me to be here, sacrificed their own well-beings to be here. My dad, like it's like you owe it to them. You owe it to them to not, it's not necessarily about what is successful, but you owe it to them to give your best. You owe it to them to try. You owe it to them not to give up. And it's like that helped me really put things in perspective and a reminder that like because I'm far from home, so a lot of times I have to figure things out on my own, but it was nice to have that moment to be reminded like yes, it is bigger than me, and like there are people as hard as it is that like are looking to me to be an example, to be a leader, which I think all of us here at Harvard, we come in here with the idea like we are the new leaders, there is this initiative like we must be kind of the next in line to help lead, given especially like we're very privileged to be here.
All right, well,
That's extremely important.
I think that's a great place to end. Zena, thank you so much. Is there any parting words that you'd like to leave everyone with?
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you guys for what you guys are doing, and I hope all you guys watching this remember your purpose and remember that it's bigger than you, but at the same token, like enjoy this experience, enjoy the time, and don't be afraid to fail because you are going to fail while you're here in some form. Or let me change it to this: something you're going to want really badly or something you're going to hope for, it may not end up how you like it. So you have to figure out what is my plan B and what is the next solution, and also just enjoy the moment because it goes by fast. I'm 23 years old now, senior. I'm an old man now.
Awesome.
Yeah, but thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
To get up.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.